It is the 30th of the 11th, 2025. The time is 25 minutes past the hour. That means one thing, that there are a multitude of F1 centric threads at which we need to pull. It is Max Verstappen. Do you fight with a person who's got nothing to lose? Lando Norris. It's Lando calling out the media and his old mate King George Russell of King's Lynn, Norfolk. It gets techier than techie things. Chat, the beef is tangible now. Why? Well, because we have this conversation underneath the aegis of the Drivers' Championship. Can Lando make his first jump, his maiden voyage? Is Lando Norris going to rock up 1.0, aka Dustin from Stranger Things, today on race day? Or will we see Lando deliver upon his, as of yet, unfulfilled potential and become Lando Norris 2.0? I don't know. But on the back of yesterday's events and the ensuing chaos and post-mortem, I'm not so sure that Lando Norris isn't losing his ride. Particularly, we'll talk about Zach Brown as well and the papaya rules in inverted commas, uppercase. Let me show you this, guys, in the first instant, because George Russell and Lando were talking about the melee that is Qatar qualifying, and it is always going to be a chaos. The track position is key, not just in the race, but in qualifying. And Lando Norris, some say, felt like George Russell had infringed upon him, impeded his progress, or at least one journalist said. And George Russell reacted to that in real time in front of Lando Norris's face. This is the dialogue. Roll the clip, Cameron.
You told me the reason you messed up turn one was because of me. Who said that? Someone to be blaming me.
With media.
I can't believe you believe them over me. It's pretty disappointing. It sounded like something you would say. What even happened? Like, where were you? You let me pass. I was going to give you a tow to help you win the championship.
Te iba a dar rebufo para que ganaras el campeonato.
And you let me pass the one and I messed up in two. So I don't know what they said. Who
Tú
said
me has
it?
pasado y... ¿Quién lo ha dicho?
I think she said it.
Creo que lo ha dicho ella. ¿Quién fue?
Yeah, he's stirring. She's not going to get it. Sorry.
I apologise for the poor audio, but that's George saying that someone said that you said, Lando, that I held you up. Lando's like, what are you talking about, mate? Who said that? This is the media. They always talk bull feathers. I'm offended, Lando Norris says to George Russell, that you believe them over me, over humanity. George responds, well, you said you blamed me. To be fair, that sounds like something that you would say. Lando was like, which media said that? Who said that? All they do is spread bull feathers. I can't believe that you believe them over me. Pretty disappointing, mate. What is Lando up to here? Even if George Russell was serious, why is Lando reacting like that? I think this is techier than techie things. This feels emblematic of Lando Norris 1.0. Remember a couple of race weekends ago, Lando Norris changed his mental coach, his sports psychologist, and it felt and sounded and looked like Lando Norris had made a step. All of a sudden he was making brilliant starts. All of a sudden in the clutchiest of clutch moments, Lando Norris couldn't make a misstep. Qualifying like Ayrton Senna back in the day was Lando Norris. Now all of a sudden he's making mistakes again. I feel like the pressurised circumstance, as you might expect, is getting to Lando Norris. And then you overlay that with this. Zach Brown. And again, it's papaya rules, isn't it? What are we doing, Zach Brown? Massive tour, PR settings, trying to manage and overcompensate for the perception of so many F1 fans and the broader F1 community that McLaren are handing themselves a championship to their prodigal son, the Mr. Business affiliate, Mr. Air Wallets Hilton, Ralph Lauren, Mr. Monster Energy himself, the prodigal son that is Lando Norris. That's the perception, and perception, some say, is reality. Zach Brown doing his best to unwind that, but then you see footage like this and it looks not too healthy, a bit cold and frosty, maybe a nothing burger, but let me show you, we could talk about it. Cheeky handshake between Zach Brown and Oscar Jack Piastri. Roll the clip. Oscar Piastri looks like he wants to do his CEO Zach Brown like he did Mohammed bin Salman. Right, get away from me, chap. Do you know what I mean? That you see me taking off my helmet. Leave me alone. Stop trying to get the PR photo. You know what I mean? Get out the way, Zach Brown. Let me have to rip out my headphones like I did the other day at the Italian Grand Prix. I think there's something going on. And again, you might say this is a nothing burger, but the optics align perfectly with what so many people are suspecting. And then, lest we forget, Oscar Piastri said a couple of things over the past couple of weeks, tweeting out Bernie Ecclestone's message, his sentiment, then saying that, of course, McLaren are going to want the British driver Lando Norris to win. He aligns better with them. There is more commercial value from McLaren's perspective in Lando Norris. He has that look, the wink and the smile, the glint in his eye. Men want to be him. Women want to be with him. That's why you see him front and centre of all these ad campaigns. That message is what was reposted on Instagram, by Oscar Jack Piastri. And then you get this. Remember, Zach Brown said, oh, no, we'll never do the 2000. Listen, if 2007 happens and Max Verstappen has to creep in the back door, then that's what it is. We'd rather have that than tinker with the rules of engagement, the papaya rules, and favour one driver. That's what Zach Brown says. His words, not mine. Oscar Piastri says that we had a meeting, a very brief discussion on team orders, on prioritising and favouritism. And the answer is no, Oscar Piastri said. I'm still equal on points with Max Verstappen and still got a decent shot of winning the Drivers' Championship if indeed it goes my way. That's what Oscar Piastri said, that there was a brief meeting. Here's what Zach Brown said, and it's orthogonal, in diametric opposition to what Oscar Piastri said.
Looking at the Grand Prix as a whole and how obviously two sides of a McLaren garage are facing it. No team orders. I know that was briefly discussed. It was said no. Obviously, Oscar's still within a chance and very much still, back to his very best here. You're up against a team that is united in now that Yuki Tsunoda's showing a bit of pace. You've got two cars versus two opposing sides of the garage. What's the management like for you guys? What's the approach?
It's pretty easy because there's not much to manage. It's let him race. So, I saw those comments. I didn't see the interview. We actually haven't discussed not doing anything other than both guys racing. So I don't know if that particular quote was taken out of context or what the question was, but the boys have been free to race since Australia. They're free to race now. As I mentioned, there's 3 different drivers that can lead this championship coming out of this weekend, and therefore how could you do anything other than continue to let them race?
Looking at
the boys have been free to race since Australia. Let's unpick this, Zach Brown, because if I recall correctly, in Australia, Oscar Piastri was bearing down on the gearbox of one Lando Norris, and you called it off. The message was, chill out, Oscar. Stand down, sir. The risk is too much of Maximilian Verstappen encroaching upon you two drivers. So which one is it then, Zach Brown? It cannot be both. You're asking me and so many F1 fans to disbelieve the evidence of their own eyes and it to be an abbot of F1 reason, and I can't do it. I shan't do it, Outlaw. It's chaos for Zach Brown at the moment. I don't get how somebody could be so openly hypocritical and ask F1 fans all around the world to do one of these. No, that's not what's true. In Australia, you asked Oscar Jack Piastri to back down. Every single time Oscar goes to overtake a Lando Norris, it's all, remember the papaya rules, Oscar Piastri. That wasn't necessarily aligned with them. It was a bit of an ambitious dive bomb manoeuvre. Lest we forget Monza, when Max Verstappen was laughing at McLaren. What, you're going to invert just because of a slow pit stop? Even then in the car, Oscar Piastri said, that's part of racing. That's outside of the papaya rules. A 5.9 pit stop happens. And again, if you're talking about inconsistency, then you've got to talk about Monza too. And you've got to talk about the British Grand Prix. I mean, everybody, all and sundry, said that was a harsh penalty on Oscar Piastri then. A cheeky infringement when the safety car lights went off a little bit late. Did they get involved then? Were they keen, Zach Brown and Andrea Stella, to put their thumb on the weighing scales of competition then? I don't think so. Oh, and by the way, listen, my old man once told me this. This is important, chat. Never get involved. Never fight somebody who's got less to lose than you, who cares less than you. Max Verstappen currently is adrift. He's third in the points haul in the driver's standings, right? Lando Norris currently leading. Oscar Piastri sits in second. Max Verstappen was heard in an interview with Chris Medland earlier on this week, leading in to the Qatar Grand Prix, saying something to this effect: that if I'd had a McLaren MCL 3.9, that this championship would have been wrapped up ages ago. Max Verstappen said they're lucky. It's not anything that we've done over at Red Bull why this championship is alive. It's things that they haven't done over on that side. He's talking specifically about McLaren and Lando and Oscar Piastri and the multitudinous mistakes that they've made, as near as makes no difference all season long. Max concludes by saying, had I had that car, I would have won the championship a long time ago. Touché, sir. Hard to disagree with Maximilian Verstappen if we're having an evidence-based argument. He's been the driver of the year, normalised for car performance by a gazillion miles. It would be disingenuous of me to say anything but that. Lando Norris responded in the press conference, didn't he? And he said a couple of things. Let's watch this and then we'll react to it. Roll the clip.
Earlier this week that he would have won the championship easily in your car. Are we seeing the mind games ramping up? And maybe if Oscar has anything to say about Max saying he would have won easily in the McLaren, you're welcome to weigh in too.
But Max is, he's very welcome to say everything he wants, to be honest, He kind of earned the right. He's won 4 world championships. I have a lot of respect, and I think that gives anyone a lot of credit in general. He's achieved an incredible amount, more than anyone generally dreams of achieving. So, Max generally has a good clue about a lot of things, but there's also a lot of things he doesn't have much of a clue about. But this also Red Bull's way of going about things is this kind of aggressive nature and just talking nonsense a lot of the time. So it depends if you want to listen to it and talk about it like you love to, or you do what we do as a team, which is just kind of keep our heads down, keep focused. So maybe he would have done, but he hasn't so far, and he keeps trying.
Techie, then techie things. There's a lot to unpick there that Lando Norris has said. In the first instance, accusing Max Verstappen of talking nonsense. Which part? What has he said that's nonsense? I agree with Lando's first stanza that Max generally has a clue about a lot of things, but then he continues, there's a lot of things that Max doesn't have a clue about at all. Which one of those things are you speaking to, Lando? Been racing you for 22 races of a 24 race championship. What doesn't he know about, mate? You've had the quickest car. Okay, you say the car is difficult to drive, but as difficult as the RB21. We have this conversation under the aegis of a difference in extents and not kinds. What are you talking about? Therefore, Lando Norris, he continues, but this is also Red Bull Racing's way of going about things, this kind of aggressive nature and just talking nonsense a lot of the time. Are you saying that Max Verstappen's talking nonsense? If you'd given him that McLaren car, that MCL 3.9, with all of its ambitious anti-squat and anti-dive, with its genius suspension and flexi-wing designed by the legend that is the last wing bender Rob Marshall, if you'd given him that car, the championship would have been wrapped up ages ago. Races back, 3 or 4 races back. It's much easier to drive, infinitely quicker than the RB21. So let's not do that, Lando Norris. And I don't think this is smart from Lando if he wants an easy life. Lest we forget, he can win the championship if he accrues over the course of the Qatar Grand Prix weekend 2 points or more than both Oscar and Maximilian Verstappen. He will be champion. That's it. Done. Full stop, new paragraph. All he needs to do, therefore, is keep his nose clean and keep his way. Find himself out of these corner arguments. What are we doing, Lando? He said in that sometimes that McLaren, we like to keep our heads down, different to Red Bull. Well, Lando, problem is, chap, all you've been doing all race weekend is putting your nose in and getting involved in these banter. What are you doing, Lando? There's no need, chap. You hold all the cards, sir. Just keep your nose clean. Keep out of these arguments. You don't want to rile up a Max Verstappen, who, by the way, has got nothing to lose going into turn 1. You know already at Qatar it's chaos and it's circumstance. You'll recall Lewis Hamilton and George Russell coming together way back in the day, or a couple of years ago, into turn 1. You know already that there's an asymmetric risk from getting a manoeuvre done, from trying and sticking a manoeuvre into turn 1 at Qatar. So how about Lando Norris? You lean in to this line of least resistance methodology. I don't think you want to be riling up a Max Verstappen, who, by the way, has got nothing to lose. Lest we forget, 2 points. If Lando Norris accrues more than equal to or more than 2 points over the course of the Qatar Grand Prix weekend as versus Oscar and Maximilian Verstappen, he wins himself the championship. It's going to get techier than techie things. And of course, Max had some things to say about this. And this is why I worry massively for Lando Norris going into turn one. Lest we forget, not always the best of starters is this chap Lando Norris. 370 something meters is the running down to turn one here. It's going to get techier than techie things. Here's what Max Verstappen had to say, and I'm going to read it out to you, courtesy of Eric Van Haren of The Telegraph. Max Verstappen can effectively go all in now that he's 25 points behind Lando Norris. If the Briton finishes ahead of him on Sunday, Max Verstappen will be eliminated for the championship. What has Max Verstappen got to lose? And you know already, a Max Verstappen with his back against the wall is a very dangerous peddler, a quick peddler. You know what I mean? One of those ones. Here's what Max Verstappen said. Now that I'm directly behind Lando Norris, there will indeed be a chance on the clean side of the grid, by the way, because in terms of pure speed, we're far too slow. What does that mean then, chat? If Max Verstappen doesn't get his nose ahead into turn one, the race is done. It's all or nothing now. This is it, chat. Full stop, new paragraph. Turn one or bust. Literally win it or bin it. And Lando's talking brazy like that. I'm telling you, it's going to get chaotic. Eric Van Haren of The Telegraph continues. You can bet that Norris starting second is keeping Max Verstappen busy. This was already evident by last week in Las Vegas when he squeezed the Dutchman after the start. He's going to have to be aggressive again, isn't he? Lando Norris. But we all recall what happened into turn one at Las Vegas, do we not? But then he braked too late and lost 2 positions. Again, when you're spinning a very many different plates and your name is Lando Norris, sometimes it can get a bit techier than techie things. And Max Verstappen says this in response to that. Quote, it's going to be a bit tougher for him, Lando Norris, again this weekend. Oscar is feeling good. You could see that again at the end of qualifying, but ultimately Lando still has a good lead, even over Oscar, 22 points, etc. Maximilian Verstappen continues, speaking this way. In fact, Eric Van Haren, this is a witty comparison and compliment to Verstappen. Norris, on the other hand, was much more negative about the 4-time champion, saying that Verstappen is talking nonsense, as aforementioned, and that Red Bull often go about their way, for their business far too aggressively. This is what Max Verstappen said, though, and this is where it gets techie. He's going all in. He's going hard. He said he's going to give it a try. Here we go. A comment few in the paddock will disagree with, by the way, that Max Verstappen would have won in the MCL 3-9. Does Max Verstappen himself admit to talking nonsense regularly? He gave a short, icy, calm response. I'm not talking nonsense. He says, quote, no, not at all. I always present facts. Facts, Lando Norris. What did Max Verstappen say about winning the championship earlier, ages ago? If indeed he were to have an MCL 3-9, a god tier machine underneath him that was incorrect, I would argue nothing. It was facts. It was absolutely on the money. So what are you talking about, Lando Norris? You don't need to be in this. You said a gazillion times that you were going to separate yourself from all the social media and all of the nonsense, the chaff and the shenanigans, because there's not, for you especially, who responds poorly under pressure, or at least has done in the not too distant past. There is disadvantage in there. You are incentivized to do one of these and access style into your flow state, but I don't think that's what Lando Norris is doing. He's an octopus here. He's tapped into everything, beefing with George, beefing with Max, and I don't think that's good. Max doesn't give 2 Fs what anybody says about, and that's the danger, Miami. Do you see what we're doing here? Never fight with somebody who's got less to lose than you, Lando Norris. That's the problem. It will be pit stop battle. I think it would be a turn one battle. People forget that Red Bull work all around Max Verstappen. Max, whether McLaren are focused on true singularity of focus is what we're talking about here. Cameron is biased towards Max, clearly. Real Betis, you know what, Real Betis, on this channel, if you're brand new, it's fine. Let me explain to you the Magna Carta, the modus operandi of this channel. I never sacrifice truth nor objectivity at the altar of partisanship nor cognitive dissonance worthy of the moniker. Not confirmation bias, not recency bias, not Hannon's razor, not nothing, never. Is it glaze? Is it D1 level Max Verstappen gaze? If it's rooted in truth, I think not. We'll be back 30 minutes before lights out, where we'll, of course, get techie than techie things. And I, for one, cannot wait. What are we doing? Yeah.